This is the Aeroo Pro. It's a drone that offers some of the best in-class lifting capabilities on any consumer drone. It has a very nice integrated dropping system directly embedded within the drone, and it also has some additional features that makes this rather appealing for fishermen or people that are going to be wanting to do small deliveries. However, the main appeal is the fishing capabilities, like dropping a fishing line out in sea, and also utilizing that camera that's built in to also determine where you drop it. So that way you can see where the fish is, fly the drone out, and always cast where you want to. I think it's very interesting the market that this drone specifically targets, and it also realistically has some of the best weightlifting capabilities out of any of the drones you can look at on the market. We're talking better than any like the Mavic family or anything from DJI. There are some swellpro drones specifically that I have not gotten to individually test. So I received the combo kit, which is different than combo kits from other drone companies. Specifically that the combo kit itself only includes 2 batteries total versus something maybe like DJI that has 3 batteries and its Fly More combo kit. So just be aware that if you are expecting with the combo kit to get 3 batteries, you will only get 2, and that is different than other places. So the batteries that this drone uses are a higher capacity 6x 4000 milliamp hour type. So that means that like compared to the Air 3 and the 3S, which has about a 4000 milliamp hour 4S battery, these have a little higher voltage for specifically lifting. They also include a internal heating element. So when I was out flying this in the cold, it just snowed, this drone was able to get about 25-ish minutes of flight time in about 20 so degree Fahrenheit weather, or some couple negative degrees in Celsius. So I was able to fly very well in that regard. They are expensive. About $50 more expensive than like the Air batteries, so they're $200. However, you also have to take into account the heating element, the higher discharge rate, so it can basically discharge energy faster, especially when you're lifting something. The heating element is nice, but also when you're out fishing, you're not going to be fishing in freezing cold temperatures. I do think it's really cool that you can actually use this drone in freezing cold temperatures, but I do think that having the option to have purchased a battery without the heating element, I don't know how much that cost is adding, but there are other companies that allow you to do that, like the Hover Air drone, and I think having a version of this battery that doesn't have the heating element, maybe saves some weight and some added capacity, would be an added plus. So included in this as well is you get the battery charger itself. It allows you to charge 4 batteries, even though it only comes with 2. You get cables, a USB-C, and then a lightning cable for your, if you have an iPhone. You have a bunch of dropping mechanisms. So you have a cable, some dropping clips. There's also some safety release clips so that if the drone gets stuck somewhere, maybe the release mechanism fails, you can still pull the drone away and not be stuck. Maybe you have something that you picked up that was too heavy, the fish was too heavy, maybe the fish starts yanking it too much. That way the drone will not fall in the water. It has a release clip that will, when it gets too much strain, it will just pop off. You get a foldable launch pad or landing pad for your drone, and then you can use that as well. So the drone itself advertises a lifting capacity of 1 kilogram, which comes out to about a 3D printer spool's worth of weight. However, in my testing, I was actually able to get it to lift like a gallon of water, which is about 8.5 pounds. So it really can be pushed beyond this limit. However, again, the advertised lifting capacity of that 1 kilogram, about 2 pounds or so, is really solid as it is. If you're doing fishing line, that's a lot of line you can carry out. And also if you're picking things up that are rather heavy, that's also extremely good. This also does have a gimbal guard, and also the gimbal itself is kind of shielded away within this enclosure too, so that way it's not really sticking out like you get on some of the DJI drones where it could be injured. So this drone has a single frame. The single frame makes it incredibly strong, so that way if you are lifting something, you're not risking snapping things at the joints. Obviously 8 pounds or however many, like couple kilograms worth of weight, if you're lifting that, that's pretty stressful on any traditional drone frame. So having it all on a single frame does make it a little bit sturdier. Also, having it in one piece makes it water resistant. So you're able to basically have some spray, some foam come up on the drone and it not mess up anything. Also, it has some corrosion coating on this, so that way it doesn't corrode out the motors by flying in the salt water. The beach tears up everything, so you also have some corrosion coating on this. However, there is one caveat to having all this done, is that, especially all in one piece, is that it does make it difficult to repair if you were to crash it. They say that the frame is really sturdy. They say it's rather strong. And if you were to crash it, all the drone components are built into the frame that is a single piece. So if you hypothetically had a replacement frame, you would have to remove all those parts and put them all back together if you choose to repair it. And honestly, that gets kind of complicated as well. They have a protection and repair plan that you can go through and pay for. And I think, honestly, this is not one of those drones that has a lot of parts available, so you're not going to be able to go through and find parts online if you choose to repair. If you're one of those people that do like to repair your items, that is something to keep in mind. So the release system on the bottom is actually a small little pin. I was a little concerned when I saw that, just how small the pin was, because especially when you think about it, like a jug of water held on by a very, like, I want to say like a needle-sized pin is kind of crazy. So I was a little concerned with that, but I think it does actually embed into something else as well, so it can lift that capacity. It's also got a dedicated button on the RC, as well as on the software as well when you push it. In addition, this drone also has a quick release button on the bottom of the drone. That way, when you're picking it up and you're trying to, install stuff, you don't actually have to reach over the controller. You can just push the button and the release pin will go back and forth, allowing you to kind of put in whatever you want to carry. Also, you have the ability to do a waypoint drop system. So maybe you want to have it fly out somewhere, drop it, and maybe you want to be manning your fishing line and then have it return. So for example, you can open up the waypoints menu, add a waypoint, and have the drone automatically fly out somewhere. In this case, imagine this is an ocean. You can fly out and drop off your fishing line out in the ocean without having to manually control it. Now I think about it though, the return to home will be GPS based. So if you're on a boat and your boat is moving, obviously you're drifting, this is a really difficult occurrence to have it land. So you have to make sure you manually fly it back. I would make sure that whatever boat you're landing on, you have a lot of space, and also use that launch pad, because of the fact that this drone is massive, and especially when it starts getting close to the ground, you do essentially get some signal interference. It does pretty good with the optical flow, but especially when you start getting in a moving boat, I would hate for you just to clip something and it fall in the water. So another thing to keep in mind too is this is an Australian drone company. So currently in the United States, there's a lot of stuff up in the air about whether or not DJI is getting banned because it's a Chinese drone company. All the other similar kind of drones in that regard are also getting banned. And so there's a big push for at least local drones or drones not from China. So it is something to keep in mind as well if you were looking at a commercial application on whether or not you would be interested in actually using this drone. The pictures from this drone do not have any of the metadata necessary in order to reconstruct it or use it for 3D modeling. You would need gyro data, GPS data, and probably compass heading as well in order to reconstruct usable 3D models from this drone. However, if those features were added, which I always push companies, especially new drone companies, to do, it would make this an option for some people that were looking to do mapping as well. And the best part is this drone has enough of a weight limit that you could probably jerry-rig some type of photo system to also sit on the bottom of this and actually use this as a reasonable mapping drone. Especially with the Waypoints ability, I might even consider developing out Waypoint map to also include this drone as well. In addition, this drone has a 50 km/h wind resistance, which means I was able to take a leaf blower and basically blast the drone and try to mess it up and push it off course, and it was able to stay pretty steady. So it's an added plus if you're trying to fly in some windy conditions. So let's talk about the picture and video quality. So the picture and the camera on this is a 1/2 inch sensor. It has capabilities to take 12 megapixel 4K 30 video, which is equivalent to about a DJI 4K, something like a Potensic Atom. I'd say like a drone equivalent to maybe probably $300 worth of camera system. Obviously, these drones also have 30 minutes of battery life, whereas this has 45. The sensor is a little noisy at times, especially in daytime. And the video, like all small drones, especially with that kind of 4K 30, 12 megapixel sensor, is not great, especially at night. I think it looks good, kind of for the context. If you need to find something, find some water, it looks good. If you need to find some fish, schools of fish, you could definitely do that too. Now, normally I would also say that the pictures could kind of be offset if you could enable a longer shutter. However, the shutter is actually the highest you can set the shutter to is about 1/30th of a second. which is effectively we can set the 4K video to. So my only request really would be in the software allow for longer exposure photos. That would help reduce some of the noise, and then the video is kind of noisy at times, so you have to manually set the ISO, and the ISO only goes up to 1600, so you're going to need to be flying in rather bright days in order to get some good 4K video that isn't particularly noisy. The flight performance on this is actually really solid as well. It does have some slightly weird behavior whenever you start getting to like above, it switches off the optical flow and switch over to GPS. It's still got a little bit more movement than I would like, but the hover capability, especially on optical flow, is rather good. It definitely flies up. It flies rather solid. It stays in place rather well. So I think overall that's good. So now I'm going to talk about some of my issues with this. Some of these is really like, there really isn't no solution for. So for example, this thing is massive, it's heavy, it's not foldable, and I understand why it can't be foldable or why it isn't foldable, and that's because of the lifting capability. I'm going to be honest, the Mavics, I'd be worried they'd be snapping at the amount of weight that this thing can carry. So I understand the single frame. It's not super repairable, but at the same time, I understand it, understand why it has to be this large, and why it's also not that portable because of purely the size. I don't know if that's really a complaint, just more so be aware that that's the compromise you're making. For this lifting capability, you're losing some on the portability. The SD card slot on this, there's actually 2 tabs on either side. I don't know what the other side is, but this side, the SD card, it is very hard to get the SD card out. There's no onboard storage, so you're having to put an SD card in there, and getting that out on and off, especially because there's no way to directly plug it in via USB-C directly on here, means that you have to directly take out the SD card every single time you want to access the photos on here. Also, they inform me that there is 2 video files, so every time you take a video, it actually saves out 2 videos. One is a high resolution and one is a compressed version. Bluntly speaking, at the moment, the compressed version is not usable. It's got some weird artifacting errors. They're supposed to make it, they were trying to say that it's one you can share easily versus one that's not like the full size. However, again, the artifacting and stuff just makes it not usable. They say it's going to be fixed with an updated or an upcoming firmware update, which that will have to be determined in the future. But at the moment, that's what I'm experiencing. Honestly, you can still use the regular video just fine, and you can probably manually compress it and get what you're looking for. It's more like an added feature that doesn't work yet. I'm not terribly worried. You still get regular functionality from it. I do have one like ease of use, like really one thing that really frustrates me specifically with this drone, and that is that the controller itself, at least for me, this drone requires me to take my phone out of the case in order to access and plug in my phone to the RC. That is that this cable is rather beefy, and if you have any decent sized case, like I have a very normal thin, rather thin case, I cannot plug the cable into my phone with that. It looks like it's in, but it's not. So I have to take out my whole phone from the case in order to access this. And lastly, one other thing I want to point out as well is that despite what it looks like, these little holes here are not obstacle avoidance sensors. I actually were curious to know if they were, but they're not. They purely are just holes that are kind of covered up. I do have a feeling that maybe this enclosure in this case was designed so that whenever you get a different, maybe a future generation, they can just kind of reuse this case and put in the obstacle avoidance sensors. So overall, this is not a drone that you should be getting to take pictures with, purely take pictures with, being bluntly honest. But then again, you shouldn't be getting any other drone to do heavy lifting if realistically this is something that you are serious about doing. The drop mechanism specifically on like Mavic drones, the attachments themselves require you to charge them. They require a special kind of clip in. They're specific, and they also are prone to having like issues. Like it is very tedious to make sure that the light is off, load it on there, turn on the light, then fly the drone up, turn the light off, and then of course you have to make sure this is turned on. Like I remember I previously tried to do a video where I dropped stuff with my Mavic drone, and that was very tedious because there were multiple times I flew up and the light wasn't on, or this wasn't on, or there was some type of issue. This is effectively you push the button and it drops, and you push the button again and it enables, and you can go up to it, click things into it, and fly it and drop it. And the experience is 1,000 times better than trying to use one of these attachments. Basically, I won't be using my Mavic for dropping anything anymore. This is specifically designed for that. So overall, buy this if you are looking at dropping something, fishing line. If you're looking at getting a camera drone, you're looking at like a Mini 3, Mini 4 Pro is something that's probably going to be able to compete in terms of camera quality and be better. And I don't think, and realistically, then you're getting up to like you're going to have to get like a Mavic 3 to be able to lift something even remotely close to this. The Air 3 does okay, but you're still going to need to be able to lift a gallon of water is not something that the Mavics are going to be able to do. Thank you, Aero Drones, for sending me this for the recording of this video. And yeah, as always, check out the channel for other cool tech-related news, reviews, and videos.